In case you don't remember, there was a time when Jessica Simpson was the hottest sex symbol in Hollywood. One of her albums, Sweet Kisses, had sold 4 million copies, and her re-release of In the Skin had just gone triple platinum. She had just finished a reality TV series for MTV with her husband, which was blowing up, and she was about to make her film debut in a movie remake of The Dukes of Hazzard, starring Johnny Knoxville and Seann William Scott. In short, she was newly married, successful, and positioned to become the next Marilyn Monroe. Which makes it all the stranger that while she was supposed to be focusing on her family and her career, Jessica Simpson was focusing all of her attention on Johnny Knoxville. Johnny Knoxville was a goofy, over-the-top prankster with a rockabilly hair and a reputation for being shot with tasers and sharp objects. He had made himself famous through his TV show Jackass and caught the attention of the Dukes of Hazzard director because of Johnny's willingness to throw himself into dangerous stunts. It was there, on the set of The Dukes, that the class clown met America's sweetheart, and the two struck up an emotional bond that would eventually contribute to Simpson's divorce. First off, we were both married, so this wasn't going to get physical, Simpson wrote in her memoir. But to me, an emotional affair was worse than a physical one. She also admits that she hadn't felt so close an emotional bond to a man since her father, and that talking to the Jackass star felt natural. I could share my deepest, authentic thoughts with him, and he didn't roll his eyes at me. He actually liked it when I was smart and embraced my vulnerabilities. He believed in me and made me feel like I could do anything. According to Simpson, she never physically cheated. In fact, she was so invested in her religious roots that she saved her virginity for marriage. Nonetheless, she told interviews she considered what she had shared with Knoxville to be worse than having sex. In that same year, Simpson began divorce filings with her husband, Nick Lackey, and the two separated by 2006. You're listening to The Re-Engineered You. This is a podcast about self-empowerment and all the myths, lies, and misconceptions we tell ourselves. Then we use science and history to bust those myths and re-engineer a better you. I'm your host, Todd Laments, the extrovert.
And I'm the writer, researcher, and introvert Joe Anthony, whose job it is to dig through the outer layer of no-duh on the internet.
If you're looking for information about emotional cheating, the internet can be a forest of questionable information. If you happen to be looking on Reddit, specifically in Change My View thread, emotional cheating flat isn't real. Spouses and significant others should be making non-sexual friends and acquaintances. Trying to keep them from hanging out with other people, even the same sex, is being a controlling partner. If you ask Vogue, emotional cheating is all in the eye of the beholder. If your boyfriend or girlfriend is accusing you of emotionally cheating, it might mean the problem lies with your partner, not you. Maybe they think an acquaintance of the opposite sex has to have an alternative motive. Or maybe you haven't set boundaries yet about how many hours each of you are allowed to spend each night texting friends. If you ask psychology today, emotionally cheating is absolutely a thing, and it can be as harmful to a relationship as Jessica Simpson claims. Today we're investigating these three perspectives, and we're getting a little guidance from the myths we've already uncovered about emotional cheating. Myth 1. Is emotional cheating even real? Or is it just a way of telling your partner that you don't like their friends? Myth 2. Is emotional cheating all that bad? If your significant other is busy texting their work bestie all throughout dinner, can't that be an innocent distraction? Myth 3. Is emotional cheating the flashing red warning sign that psychological textbooks make it out to be? Is spilling your secrets to someone other than your partner a relationship harbinger? We're going to get to our myths, but first I want to ask Joe if he's ever experienced this.
I experienced emotional cheating, and I happened to be in a very lucky position. I had a partner that was willing to be honest and talk about things and to set boundaries. I happened to be going to therapy at the time because I had a good union job and I was seeing somebody for emotional help. And both Todd and a couple other very trusted friends helped me. It was one of those situations where like the stars aligned and I had basically the perfect support network. And I remember, Todd, what you told me specifically helped me, which is, it's not as bad as I think it is. It feels the worst. Like it honestly feels better to be physically cheated on, because then you have a clean reason for, either setting boundaries, being angry, breaking up, whatever. It's a lot easier to deal with. It is painful, but it is quick and it is, it's decisive. Emotional cheating is not. Like it's messy. It's difficult to tell them they're not allowed to talk to somebody, even if it is, it's platonic, but it's also something where they are taking out of your relationship to put into this other one. And
it's certainly messy. I think messy is a good term because it is complicated.
Yeah.
Right. Because their attention is so valuable to you, and the idea of sharing it, but then thinking that you fill all their needs as far.
Right. Because I do believe in the what is it, the Greek words of love. Like there's like 7 or 8 different types of love where like you get platonic love from somebody, you get brotherly love from somebody else, you get the love of an elder educating you from somebody else. Like I do believe in that model. But there is a difference between what Reddit is saying, which is they should have multiple relationships to be a healthy, well-rounded person. They absolutely should. But there is a difference. When you end the day, like you come home from work and they spend 4 hours on the phone with somebody else, and then you both quietly go to bed and they don't look at you, like they just roll over and face away from you because they're still busy texting. That feels awful. Like that is that is like there's oh god, I don't remember which comedian said it, but there's no worse feeling of aloneness than being in a relationship where you feel alone.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's it. I also recognize that like this is seen as a young person problem, like as if when you get more mature, you somehow get rid of the idea that somebody would like spend all their time with somebody else.
And that's the thing too. I think people, a lot of my friends almost snobbishly dismiss that. Like it's not worth it or this or that. And of course they would never put themselves out there. Do you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't walk their dog down a street that had squirrels on it, but not out of discipline or respect for their spouse. It's mostly out of laziness, because they're not nice to anybody. So they're not gonna, but if you're with somebody who's attractive inside and out, other people are going to be attracted to them too. Right.
Yeah. Especially if they have a good personality and like they're friendly, and all the reasons you fell for them are the reasons why somebody else wants to talk to them all the time. And there's a tension. I will start by saying that like it almost always means that you also have done something wrong. I don't want to make it seem like the person who is emotionally cheating is in the right, but I do want to say that it usually means there's something lacking in the relationship that they are looking for. When Jessica Simpson started paying all of her attention and time on Johnny Knoxville, which feels like a punchline. Like I love this article that we found because it's like that almost is a joke on itself. No knock to Johnny Knoxville, but like dude takes tasers for a living and like was very much, I mean, like he was in Jackass. He knew he was kind of the butt of jokes.
You'd almost think she wouldn't talk to him if they were on the same set. They would have separate, you know what I mean? They would just be like, "Oh my god, I work with that goofball." Yeah, they're very extreme, and she's this amazing singer, and
right. It is the goofiest person on earth and the hottest person on earth at the time getting together, and everybody is just scratching their heads. That's probably why they got away with it, because nobody could believe it.
Well, I think it's important. For funny, I remember this movie because at the time I was really into working out, and they showed what she did because I think she played the Daisy Duke, right? Isn't that who she played?
Yeah.
Which is synonymous with sexy for my generation. I mean, that's the most beautiful woman ever, right? And
right.
But her workout schedule, her diet was shocking. It mirrored a boxer training for a fight just to get in shape. So the reason I bring that up is it isn't because she's not disciplined.
Right.
Like, oh, you just have to be tough. And well, no, there, like you said, there's holes that need to be filled, right? And so in our personalities and in our attention.
Yeah. And we'll get that. And if you have not recognized that your partner has emotional holes, like we were talking about, that aren't getting filled, then you are part of the problem. You are part of the reason why they're seeking relationships outside. Now, this could be things. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you going to unpack your whole thing, or use that for later? Or
oh no, I will absolutely. Okay. I was going to say that the more common ones that we have looked up, these are from psychology articles mostly. Our attention is one of the huge ones. They are not getting attention from you. Like a relationship has become complacent. You are so familiar with each other and your routine. You normally aren't talking that much anyway, and you're not actually looking at them when they talk or like engaging them in conversation. The Gottman Institute, and Gottman is the relationship psychologist that has like built a foundation of like, here's how relationships work. The Gottman Institute calls it bids for attention. You're not paying attention to their bids for attention anymore. If they start talking or they say, hey, the new season of The Wire or whatever is, there hasn't been a new season of The Wire forever. That's dating me, but the new season of the awful Game of Thrones prequel. It's I hate it. What do you think? And you just are like, yeah, me too. That is ignoring a bid for attention. They want a conversation and they want you to talk to them and pay them attention. And so if you don't,
it's almost postured too, like the way they talked when your sister's over is not respectful. You know what I mean? Like they'll go with you to something, but they don't want to be there. And then you think, why did I bring this person? It's so it's exhausting, is what it is. And I've been both sides of it. I've been that guy who acts immature and can't just get on stage and do that for my partner. And then I've been the one where I drag the person along because I think I need company, and then they're not there.
Yeah, and that can be a huge part of it, where you are treating them almost like wallpaper at that point. and like you said, you're almost not even there in the same room with them, even though you physically are. So that's separate issues, by the way. Not paying them attention or giving them your attention. They're going to have to go seek it elsewhere. They just will. Treating them as if they and their interactions with you are routine. That also means they're going to seek somebody who won't treat it as routine, who will treat it as novel. Not putting in work within the relationship. That's just, again, things have become rote for you, and you're just going through motions. But it can also be more their problem than yours. Like it's never any one person's singular problem if they start an emotional cheating. But maybe they just enjoy the dopamine rush of meeting somebody new and getting the feeling of progressing a romantic relationship with them, except they won't break the line of getting physically intimate. They have standards where they don't want to have sex, but they will sort of progress things as if they are dating.
But isn't that the fun part of a relationship when it's new? Absolutely.
Yeah.
When it's the most exciting. When you have those sunglasses on where you don't see their faults or your own, you feel attractive, you feel interested because they're interested in it, because you're new to them. The things you do are new to them. And
I remember somebody asked me about this, and I was like, it was one of my female friends, and I'm like, ma'am, I'm a writer. Like, half of writing is based on this feeling you're describing. Half of the excitement of reading a new book is the romance. And if you don't have romance in a book, you better imply that you do, because there's so much dopamine and reward in the feeling of a relationship progressing that we will shoehorn it into everything.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah. Do you remember the show Chernobyl that is just about the nuclear disaster?
I've watched it 100 times, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and there's this sort of like byplay of this very old investigator in Russia and this like very old nurse, and people on Reddit and online were like, are they going to become a thing by the end of it? And it's like, are you kidding me? This is about the worst disaster in human history, and we're like speculating, we're shipping them. It's like, no, we don't need a romance in this.
And they're not Jessica Simpson and Johnny Knoxville either. They're,
right, exactly.
They're middle-aged scientists.
Yeah, but my point is if you can't or won't provide the excitement of a progressing relationship or that feeling where things are new and like you're taking things places and it's fun and interesting, then they're going to have to seek that elsewhere. Just flat, they will, unless they're extraordinarily patient and they don't care about that stuff, which no human does. I don't think I think there's a reason it's a universal emotion. That's where I mostly when I was emotionally cheated on, I was not being available in that way. I wasn't being cute in a new relationship way, and I wasn't providing that sort of like upward mobility in a relationship that indicates romance. Even saying that makes me sound like a robot, by the way. I recognize that.
Well, but it shows that this is not natural. And I think certain personality types, I have a lot of friends, as you know, through Toastmasters who are computer programmers, and they do have a check the box off with being married.
Absolutely.
They would never think of talking to another woman or even they might acknowledge them, but that's not in their. They're not going out having affairs of any kind. That's just not the way they are. So when you're with someone like that, their needs are different, right?
Yeah.
Their emotional needs, the bill's not as high.
Yes. And
you could be in that boat where, you're good about understanding romance through writing, but in your own life, it's a little more complicated.
Oh, 100%. And that's what ended up happening. The funny phrase you use, checking the box, it's like, no, I literally had to go back and like make a list of like, here's what a interested romantic relationship or romantic partner does. Here's the steps. Here's the cute things that they do for each other. And it's like, I wasn't doing any of those. Like I was, yeah. I was in a...
Did it make you feel good? Did it make you feel, did you feel like it was your fault? That's what I'm getting from with how you're talking.
No, I later on recognized that I had fault in it, and I contributed to them needing that somewhere else. At the time, I just felt vindicated that I wasn't hallucinating. Like, I honestly, I was never gaslit. Nobody ever convinced me it wasn't happening, but I hadn't even heard of it. So I was like, if they're not physically cheating, what's the problem? I just knew that I felt bad, and I didn't know how to put words to it, and I didn't know how to confront the other person. So it was really a situation of you don't know when to talk to them, because it's like, how do you come to somebody and say you're making too good of friends?
Well, then, yeah, and it's a good person too, right?
Yeah.
Like Joanne, my wife, she wants to go out to lunch. I always encourage and everything, and every once in a while, I'll get a ping of jealousy, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost my own insecurity that this person is better than me,
Yeah.
And it's not about trust. It's not about it. To me, it doesn't. That has nothing to do with it. Oh, I trust my wife. I trust my husband. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with these these feelings and how our lives are changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so they get your time and I don't. And the best advice I got from my therapist, which is very cliche advice, it's use I statements and you'll get the most truth out of what you're feeling and thinking, which is, I felt like I wasn't getting hardly as much time as this other person, and I felt like I wasn't having my emotional needs met. I wasn't having conversations. I wasn't feeling like I was in a relationship. I felt like I was cohabitating with somebody.
Well, for me, it's the opposite. I think I'm afraid of full loss.
Okay.
Of them running away and fine, because it's happened to me before. I think the biggest misconception is how much value there is in having somebody's attention. And a beautiful woman who you get her attention, that is the most thing she can give to you. That is the most valuable thing. You don't want anything else from her than that.
Well, we've had episodes where we've talked about the value of attention and like how The smartest man on earth, William Sidis, the only thing that their parents did to like encourage his learning was to pay him attention when he learned the right things. Like attention is the currency of a relationship. Attention is how we train people, how we talk to people. In a tribe, when you want to show somebody disapproval, you don't kick them out or flog them. You just stop talking to them for a while. Like if they say something really dumb,
Yeah.
everyone just rolls their eyes and looks the other way. So attention is really how we deal with people and deal with relationships. So it is very valuable, and it is. I mean, yeah, it's what will keep you in a relationship. We mentioned the word harbinger. Gottman Institute recognizes that like a disgust for somebody or not paying them attention are harbingers of a relationship. Meaning, if you don't pay attention to them and you have any disgust for them, then the relationship is a goner. Like you will be divorced. If you don't address it and fix it and work on it. I know I took up so much time with that one. Do you have experiences with emotional cheating specifically?
I do. My first marriage, I worked for a bank out of San Diego, and then one of the people came up. I worked with them over the phone and stuff, and then they came out, and I was married, very married at the time, and that person was on the inside part, who more of a corporate job, and I was in the outside sales, and then we started to text and fall in love. I mean, just full on Johnny Knoxville, Jessica Simpson fall in love. And it changed my life. I lost 40 pounds. I got LASIK. I changed my appearance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it almost was, I almost felt like I was being reborn. Do you remember the episode we did about long distance relationships?
Yes.
And the gist of it was that when you're in a long distance relationships, what most people think it's not real. It's not a big deal. It's very casual. Well, it's not very casual. It's all consuming, and you have to become more romantic, and you have to become, it's almost a healthy relationship because you're so present when you do have that person on the phone. And when you do get to see them, it's like a Disneyland vacation. And I know you've been in a long distance relationship and you've been in regular relationships. Aren't long distance relationships powerful?
They are more intense, and you have to put in more work. Anybody who thinks that long distance relationships are boring or not real, that means they weren't doing it correctly. A long distance relationship, to be sustainable, has to be you make more time for them, you are more present for them, you have to set aside time and set goals for the relationship that you stick to. So it's tough.
I was in yoga class once, and there was this couple, and one was going to Stanford and one was going to MIT, and they were this young Asian couple, and they were very cute, and they didn't really say much. They were real shy, and I said, well, how do you feel about your partner going back to MIT? And then she said to me in a very sad voice, she said, my heart's going to be in Boston. And I just remember it almost made me cry because it was so genuine. Yeah. And she wasn't that kind of person. She was a scientist herself. And that's how it feels. Your heart is somewhere else.
Yeah.
And when you're an emotional intelligence like that, yeah, I was still married and I was still sleeping in the same bed. But my interest and my soul and my spirit was in San Diego.
Yeah. And that feels like that is the inside of an emotional cheating is you from the other, like the wounded partner's perspective, it just feels like you are alone and the other person is never paying attention to you. From the inside of it, from being the emotional cheater, your heart is elsewhere, and to pretend otherwise is just sort of trying to give yourself a justification, like, oh, we're not sleeping together. And I will ask you first, do you agree with Jessica Simpson when she said that emotional cheating is worse on your relationship than actual physical cheating?
Yes. I think someone who wants to just hook up on online dates, or you know what I mean? Or it's just, it's not the same kind of level of commitment.
Yeah.
What do you think? I think it's not even close to me.
It's so hard to see the justification for emotional cheating because if somebody physically cheats on you, it's oh, they were impulsive, or oh, they made a mistake, or oh, they wanted sex, or oh, they needed the thrill, or they had a control issue, whatever it is, or if you turn it on yourself, you say, oh, I wasn't providing an exciting enough experience for them. Emotional cheating is so much worse because you say, what's wrong with me emotionally? Like, wasn't like what am I not providing? Is there something wrong with me? Like emotionally, is there something wrong with me? Am I not interesting enough for them? Am I not fun enough for them? Like, physical cheating, you can say it was a physical thing. Emotional cheating is, it wounds you deeply because there's something wrong with me.
This is exactly what I went into when I was going through this yoga thing where I was single and I was dating these different women. I remember being so jealous of people from all different age groups. So if they were older guys, they were rich and they were interesting and traveled. If they were young, they had these great bodies and they were doing all these. I couldn't compete. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about this. Like, how much more interesting do I have to be? Do you know what I mean? And then the stuff you do, it's not new and it's not exciting. So it's like, it's hard keeping someone's attention for over that, what do we call it, 7 to 10 year itch.
Oh God, yeah.
Now, have you ever read that book Stephen King did on writing? It's a nonfiction book.
I did, yes.
I don't know if you remember this, but in the beginning, he's talking about him and his wife, and he says, we are just monogamous by our make.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting. That he can be worth $1 billion and have all these, and be writing about sex and emotions. And he does a lot in his books. That's a lot of his has got that a sexual tone to him, right? To his storytelling.
Yeah, there's always a component of that, and I think it serves the story well.
So do you think certain people are like our computer programmer friends who they're good to go? And they don't need that outside thing, and maybe that's something we're inventing?
No, I think that everybody does need outside stimuli. I think some people are just better at getting it from fictional sources, and I'll change that phrasing a little bit so it's a little bit more understandable. I think that everybody wants the thrill of a new relationship and the thrill of meeting somebody and the thrill of romance and everything. I think that I get it vicariously through movies and TV and through reading. If you ever want, like one of the funniest things I've ever talked about with the romance writers that I've spoken with, one of the romance writers I spoke with is like all the little old ladies who are sitting on the bus reading a Kindle, and they've got like a knitted Afghan for like their Kindle backer, and they've got their little readers on, and they look very cute. And you're like, what are they reading? I bet it's about gardening. No, it's filth. It's always romance. They're going home to their husbands who are old retired men, and they're not going to talk about that they got that thrill and that excitement from a fictional source.
You should write a book about that. That is the best thing. That is the best thing I'm going to hear all day. I promise. It's not funny. You're just thinking that. Yeah.
No, I think that when you mention your computer programmer friends and very nerdy people who are monogamous by nature, I mean, heck, Stephen King was reading all kinds of wild shit. Like he was reading Cormac McCarthy, and Stephen King talks about like his favorite books, and they are crazy and they are deep and dark, and a lot of them have heavy romance elements. So no, I think that if you are a monogamous by nature, committed person, you are still getting that thrill elsewhere, even if you're getting it from Game of Thrones or if you're getting it from watching, TV or Succession or whatever your chosen fiction is. You're probably getting it from a different source.
Well, I did want to bring this up. So in the sales world, and this has been self-help for years now, but Tony Robbins has been spreading a myth that has always been popular with people. And this is what it is. I don't know if you've heard this, but he goes on and on about this. He says that the way to sustain a long distance relationship and keep it fresh and new, like you just met, right? He said, is to treat the person exactly like you did when you met them.
Yes.
That is so fucking impossible, Joe, because you don't like them the way, and they don't respond the way they used to.
Yeah.
They've got that ick factor from you, and you can feel it. And what they used to think is cute makes them roll their eyes at best,
Yeah, they're like, I've seen how you eat. I've sat at your table. I know you're not like this.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've seen your dirty
anymore.
They've seen your dirty underwear. They don't like you the same. Oh, treat them exactly. You couldn't do that if you wanted to. And
You
and the feeling's mutual.
yeah, you almost got me to agree with Tony Robbins. I thought that sounded really good there, but you're right. It would be very hard to sustain that, and yeah, you have to find new ways to make that emotional connection happen. Like it can't be. I mean, like when you're first attracted to somebody and you're first dating, they can do the dumbest, stupidest stuff, and you're like, "That's so cute."
Yeah, you have those 9 months, those shades on that we talked about in another show where you kind of you numb that stuff out.
Yeah. For reference, we have an episode that's all about love, and it's the hormonal chemical stages of love and what happens at different phases, and like how to keep love going after the dopamine reward stage is over. You have to start building up, familiarity in a positive way, and yeah, it's a very interesting episode, and we kind of break the stages apart, and it's like here's why some relationships don't last past the exciting first stage, and it just comes down to what hormones you encourage and you take advantage of. But yeah, it's most emotional cheating. It almost bypasses the first stage. There is excitement, there is the building of the new relationship, but it's also you're building familiarity. You're literally treating it as if it is going to be a lasting romantic relationship, but it just doesn't. Now that can change. That can become cheating. Like I do want to say that can actually be when people talk about, oh, I left my partner and ended up marrying somebody I loved. That's exactly what they're talking about. That starts out as emotional cheating. So it is also dangerous. It's not always innocent, and it doesn't always stop like Jessica Simpson's relationship did. One of the myths that we talked about that I really want to bust, like I'm very clearly biased in this, but that's because I've read a lot about emotional cheating and I went through it. There are segments of the population, especially on Reddit, who want to justify emotional cheating. They side with the Greek many forms of love thing. They think that emotional cheating isn't legitimate, and that's not true. It is a recognized. It's recognized by the the American Psychology Association, and it's got a definition. And the definition is when a person in a committed relationship forms a deep emotional connection with a third party. The connection isn't sexual, otherwise that just means it's cheating. And the most important part of this, the emotional connection with the third party may surpass that of the primary committed relationship, and it usually involves an amount of secrecy and deception. So when I talked about the experience of they spend their time and attention on somebody else in a way that actually has to start cutting time out of your day with them and your relationship with them, that's what that is. It is they're sacrificing parts of your relationship to feed into the new relationship. And obviously this leads to a loss of confidence. It can feel like gaslighting, or it can actually involve gaslighting. Gaslighting is when somebody tries to convince you that the reality in front of your face isn't, you're perceiving it wrong.
You're crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And it's important to note, and something I want to make really, really clear. It does not always have to end like Jessica Simpson, where she divorced her then husband. She legitimately divorced him, got over him, and moved on. Emotional cheating does not always end in divorce. Oftentimes, yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of times it goes in streaks where they'll go from one of those to another, almost like a sampling of dating.
Yes.
Different people of different ages and different ethnicities, and trying to fill. That's what I've noticed from people I know who've had lots of them, I've talked to.
If they are a serial emotional cheater, that's exactly what happens. Is they will go through a series of people. If it is a situation where you are both mature about it, you both come to the table, you can both set new boundaries. We're going to talk about how to do that here in a little bit. And both parties are receptive to admitting to their share of the problems. And everybody uses a lot of I statements. If that can happen, and if you can rebuild the relationship and start providing what the partner who is cheating, if you can start providing what they need and what they're trying to get filled, then according to Psychology Today and Gottman, a lot of these couples are able to move past emotional infidelity, and it strengthens their connection afterward because they now know what each other expect and want. They've had the conversation that they didn't have before, where they address, what is the other person looking for? How do we provide that? And what do we unwilling to provide? You say that all out loud in a way that is loving, and you're actually seeking to tell this person, hey, I'm invested in you for the long term. Let's fix this. That can result in a more powerful relationship afterward. But the first part is getting over the feeling of resentment, getting over the extreme jealousy and the fear and the feeling of gaslighting. That is such a tough barrier to get over.
I like the idea of getting the calendar out. When did this all start?
I did that. No. You say that. I went nuts. I was like that meme where like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is like, he's got the board behind him of like all the evidence and like the red strings going to different stuff. As soon as I realized that something was legitimately happening, I felt so validated and I went insane. Like I was tracking timelines.
I think I was with you when this whole thing started.
You were.
When you were aware, and I remember touching your back, and we were at a show. We were out doing something social, and there was a physical chemical change in you. Your back was tense, and I thought, oh no, are you okay? you weren't okay. You were upset,
Wild-eyed. Yeah.
No, you weren't wild-eyed, but you were shaken. We'll put it that way. And you're not a shaker. You know what I mean? You're usually pretty solid.
Yeah.
And you were upset, but not. I don't know how to explain it, but something was wrong. There was a problem.
I think that you're right. I'm usually a very, very stable person. Like I think that the thing people value around me is that I'm stable, slow, and pretty predictable. But that was you're absolutely right. I was visibly different.
Well, when it's happened to me, you go through all the emotions. You're angry. You're scared. You're mad. You go through all those like over and over and over. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah. So I have the question for you to continue this, which is, how bad is emotional infidelity really? Like, it's not like anyone's having real sex.
Well, they said this the other day. I read this talk about jealousy, right? And when someone is jealous, because I am not for controlling and not letting somebody have friends and do things. I have lunch dates. I go hiking with female friends. And I respect the fact that my wife doesn't have a problem with that. And I wouldn't want to be with someone who does that. And I like this quote. It wasn't a quote. It was, people are jealous because they're afraid that their partner is going to see how ugly they are inside. That's going to come out and they're not going to want them anymore. So you want to have a certain amount of confidence, right? But to answer your question, I think it leads to divorce. Yeah. I think it leads to neglect in your relationship, and it's gonna speed up that clock. I think we have the 7 to 10 year clock. Do we agree on that?
Yeah. It was.
Do you want to explain that? What that is?
Yeah. I don't remember. It was one of our very early episodes. We talked about the 7-year itch, and it's an old joke and also a movie. That every 7-ish years after you've been in a relationship that long, you feel the desire to go out and physically cheat, and it is a strong desire. And there were a couple of
just to change tribes, right? Just to become a different species.
Almost, yeah. There are exogenous species, meaning like there are groups of animals that like gorillas. Female gorillas will be motivated to leave their tribe when they reach the age to like breed. Like, they're the ones that will go out and find a totally new tribe, totally new mate. I think it's baboons. It's the older males will go find a totally new tribe and start breeding with the younger females. We have 7 years that pass and we start getting antsy, and we're like, can I find a new partner? Can I find a new lifestyle? But we found out that on an earlier episode, that is trackable. Like you can basically figure out, how long does it take for us to have a kid as a species, and when is that kid old enough to where they are smart enough to hold a spear in front of them, smart enough to not be eaten by lions, smart enough to where like they're not going to wander off into the tall grass and get tackled by a jackal. We basically found out that we didn't, Todd and I, but scientists found out that it's about 7 years. Like all of the cognitive development that allows a child to not be in danger all the time is approximately 7 years. And so the 7 year itch might be a sort of hormonal clock telling you, okay, you've been around this person long enough to have had a child that can now survive on their own, roughly. Now it's time to go move on and make another one.
That's
Yeah.
that's a well explained. Now, it is emotional. So you asked me, is emotional infidelity, right? Is it not? We're not having real sex. I think it's more dangerous because it lasts longer.
Yeah.
I mean, real sex is exciting, but it's short, in the grand scheme. And when you're in an emotional relationship with somebody, you're literally, it's one thing to have sexual fantasies and this and that, but they have your heart. They have your attention, and you're thinking about them all the time. I have an example of a healthy emotional relationship. When I used to work in the corporate world and I was in outside sales, and we'd have territories. And what I would do is when I go to a training or a seminar, I would find a woman who was like the most alpha, meanest woman in the whole department. And what I would do is I would very cornily, I would propose to her and say, I want you to be my work wife. They were always so flat. And I always found someone who had different skill sets than I did. I was always good at the sales, the talk, the communicating, the cold calling, but they'd be better at the computer stuff and working with corporate, right?
Yeah.
Well, when they get that status of being a work wife, and I had any problem at work, I would just call, I'd call Nancy and say, I'm going to call my work wife the biggest bitch in the whole company.
Right.
And then during the day, we would talk to each other for about work stuff, right? And we'd communicate. We built a relationship. It was very healthy, and it helped me get through a job that I was struggling with,
I also like the idea of like it's reverse prison rules where you don't go beat up the biggest person there. You go make friends with the meanest person there.
Exactly. And then the comedian Amy Wong talks about dating. She has a kid. She's a divorced mom, and she says, I don't want some hot single guy. I want a divorced dad. I want a guy whose spirit has already been broken by another woman. And it's real true what she's saying, right? She wants somebody. She said, I'll look like a cheerleader next to his ex-wife,
Right. Yeah, I noticed in your notes you had the YouGov study about how many people in how many British adults cheated versus how many were purely emotional, not physical.
Yeah, they had a study of a good size, 1,600 British adults. 20% of them unfaithful to partners, and only 15% of that 20% said that it was as a physical component. So they admit to cheating, and I think that's low. I'll tell you why, because people won't disclose that, right?
Yeah.
So
or they won't even recognize it as emotional cheating. Like they may not have had that open, naked conversation with the other person where they talked about, hey, this is actual emotional cheating. So like, yeah. So 1 in 20 actually said there was a physical component. What was that? 3 in 20 said that it was emotional only. And that's still a shocking amount. Like that's still so high.
It is. And I think that it was that powerful that they would admit to it and that they know it was real. Because
yeah.
I think when it becomes real is when you start thinking about making changes, right?
Yes.
Like if
you start admitting things. Yeah.
you start visualizing your life with somebody else. And I guess we didn't talk about this. I think we're going at this as you're already in a committed relationship when you're doing this. But what about the person who's on the other side of that? Who's involved with someone who's married, who's single?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of justification that happens from that end. Yeah, I've seen American studies that are as high as a third of all people have emotionally cheated in some way, and that they just haven't admitted it to themselves that they have done this. So I think you're dead on. I think you're right about it. And a lot of the people who are pushing somebody to emotionally cheat, a lot of people who are in the position of Johnny Knoxville, pulling somebody who is in a committed relationship away from their relationship, the way they justify it is they say, "Oh, we're just friends," or "Oh, she would never cheat. She's married, and I'm not looking for sex anyway." Like, there's a lot of ways to emotionally, personally spin it so that you don't feel like the villain while
Yeah.
you are taking somebody out of their relationship.
And in the research that you sent me, there's a woman named Chloe. And she was married for 12 years, and they had a 3-year-old son. And then this relationship started building, kind of like what I was talking about, the work wife. And then over time, she didn't know how to handle it because nothing physically happened. So there wasn't this hotel room or working late at work thing. So you don't know when to, when to put both oars in and start paddling, right?
Right.
So you don't know when to start. And she said it took her a long time to get over it because and she felt like she was being gaslighted because nothing really had happened. There's nothing that you could really, take them to court over,
Right. And because this isn't, does it feel like people are more aware of physical cheating nowadays than they used to be? Because I think you're right. There isn't a set way of dealing with it. There isn't like
I'll tell you what I think. Yeah, I think because of phones and social media and cameras, I think it's gotten
worse.
Well, I think people get caught more.
Yeah.
I think there's just so many ways that there's just trails of things which there wasn't before. Because sex and cheating is not a new thing,
Right.
I remember thinking, what was it that Benjamin Franklin used to write letters to women across the world, right? These long letters well, that's what that was. That weren't his wife, these romantic letters.
Emotional cheating done pen and quill. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get the letter for 6 months, but it was powerful.
But also, Ben Franklin couldn't write letters for 4 hours a day to these women and get responses immediately. I think texting has made it easier to emotionally cheat and worse to emotionally cheat because it is instant. And yeah. Do you want to talk about why emotional cheating happens just by the numbers? Like, what were the most common reasons given?
Please.
The first one we kind of covered, just talking about your role in emotional cheating if you are being cheated on. And that's that you're not available as much. One partner isn't as available. 48% of men rated emotional dissatisfaction as the primary reason they cheated. So like more than like half of men say, I just wasn't getting emotional satisfaction. Like my partner wasn't being a partner. And so I just had to find that somewhere else. The other 50% break down into these other three categories. One is they feel disrespected. They'd rather talk to somebody who values their opinions and they actually listen. The other partner feels unappreciated. So like they do a lot of things for you. They do a lot of chores. They support you in some way and they just don't get anything back. So they start looking for somebody who will show appreciation.
Well, can I touch on that? I made a big thing about the Anthony Robbins thing, but there is the other extreme to that where the person doesn't treat you with respect at all. And literally treat you like a roommate. And I've been in those relationships where they're not even polite with you or make you feel special at all. And you are so lonely in your relationship, and not just for attention, just for someone to be kind to you. And they have bad days at work and they take it out on you and they bully you and it's not fun, and I think that's very common. I think a lot of times this person 10 years later doesn't even resemble the person they married.
I think you're right. And that is the dark side of emotional cheating from the perspective of the cheater, which is just finally having somebody like be nice to you.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just getting kicked around at home and you don't want to go home. It's not fun. Another thing about I've had emotional cheating thing is being involved in church And I've been on both sides of church. I've been a single guy at church where you're treated like a leper. They hate single people at church. They do. They do. They absolutely hate us. And they hold married couples in this high esteem. And they say God hates divorce, and they do all this stuff. The one thing they never talk about, and you're not allowed when you're at church to be attracted to anybody or anything. It's seen as being gross, right? Which is weird because they want to have babies and, people to get married and stuff. But they never talk about how to treat your spouse. They just talk about never getting divorced. And to me, it seems like it's just a growing, a great place for abuse to start.
Yeah.
Because you have the social pressure of, someone should be able to treat me as bad as they want, but I'm their wife or husband, which is very possessive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I wonder too, if like they're wanting you to go through more of a structured way to like meet somebody rather than like somebody from the flock. There's, I remember
go hunt somewhere else.
Yeah. I remember talking to my Mormon roommate, and he was like, no, they have mixers. Like they'll throw on official Mormon functions to find you a wife. Like you don't bug somebody.
Mormons are great. No, they give
church.
you one. They give you one at BYU.
Yeah.
They call it BY I do. I'm telling you.
Really?
Yeah, that's what the street name for it is.
That is so funny.
Yeah, so you get back from they're already setting this up because they know just what you said. They're better people stay in the church who are structured. It's a business and they're good at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get one, like you go buy a book, you go get a wife or a husband at the bookstore. Same thing.
You pick up your husband from the husband store and you go to the checkout lane. Yeah, we don't have stats on like how many married couples versus unmarried couples experience emotional cheating, but I'm very willing to bet that it is like almost the same or worse for married couples, because if somebody can't leave contractually, then you don't have to pay attention to them as much. Like you're less incentivized to keep them around, so maybe you're less incentivized to like give them those bids for attention and put in the extra work to keep them around. So to get back to our points on like how many people emotionally cheat and why, our last one is they lack control. Somebody who's emotionally cheating may have poor impulse control. They need that dopamine, or they lack the ability to regulate their emotions. So that is one where like almost all of these examples are both parties have some fault or have made some mistakes in the relationship. There is such a thing as just purely being emotionally cheated on because the other person lacks impulse control. And that is something that they should seek help for.
I have another word for that.
Yeah.
I call it boy crazy or girl crazy.
Yeah.
And some of us, and I'm one of them, are just that way. When I see a beautiful woman, Joe, it's like I've never seen one before. I honestly am shocked. I am. And I've always been that way. And I'm 51 years old, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. So I think some of us are just boy girl crazy.
I will give that to you. I think that's right. They also call that compulsive, and that should also be something you seek help for. So.
I see it as sign as good health.
He's just being a teenager. Let him be.
Boys would like to say, I'm not
boys will
dead.
be boys.
I'm not dead. Yeah, boys will be boys.
Well, I'm one of the things that Jessica Simpson said. I wanted to try to prove or disprove. She said it was worse than emotional cheating was worse than physical cheating, and she said it was hard to stop. And I wanted to look up and find out if emotional cheating is as difficult to stop doing, because it feels like it'd be easy, like just like, hey, stop talking to them. Like that other person that you're spending all your time with, just don't talk to them as much. Give me some of that attention back. But what they say in we're gonna link to a couplescounselingcenter.org article. They talk about how it can be much harder to stop than physical cheating, and the reason why is because the affair is it is getting a deeper connection over time with somebody else. Like ending a relationship that is emotional in nature rather than physical, it's more complicated. There's more knots involved. Strong feelings are involved. The good kind of feelings, like not the gross cheater feelings or the I'm getting sex. Like there's a taboo to it. It's like no, you're getting the feelings that you need in life. Like you're getting they talk to me, they listen, they think my opinions are valuable. They give me respect. They give me their attention. Like all of those are very, very, very positive things that we should want in life. So it's much harder to put those down. And there's also the complication of the other person doesn't want to give up this relationship either. So if you have a partner that's emotionally cheating, they will tell you, but the other person needs me too. Like,
Right.
what do I do with that relationship? Do I just tell them, hey, can't be friends anymore?
They still have either financial value or they have some emotional value too, and trying to have both, right?
Right. So it is both complicated and it is harder to stop doing.
I have a theory on this. I think you're more vulnerable to emotional relationships when you're married because, and I can speak from a man's perspective on this, I think women, I know for a fact that women like you more when you're married. They feel safer with you. They feel like someone's already signed off on you. So you kind of get
pre-approved.
Yeah, because when you're single, you creep them out. But when someone already said, and you kind of have a little bit of peace about it, you're cleaned up your act a little bit. Women definitely put us on they straighten us out, right, Joe? If nothing else, they get us. And so we're less threatening because we're less about sex. We're more about attention.
Yeah. I think that is a very good way to put it. And that means that like breaking off an affair with somebody who has become essential to your well-being can also be difficult. Like if they are now a piece of your life that is holding up that support or holding up that beam that is your emotional well-being, that's tough. So it's worse than stopping an addiction sometimes. It's an addiction, at least you can say, is unhealthy for me. A emotionally supportive person out there, that's so much harder to walk away from. So we talked about some of the steps to get over emotional cheating, but we kind of want to like go over them step by step, so that people have a roadmap for, how do you deal with this when it happens. The first step is really, really tough. And it's the one where you're going to feel like you are imposing on them. You're being an ass for asking, especially if you haven't had confirmation. If you haven't found a text or Discord message or something that says, that is blatant emotional cheating, like that, where it's like, oh no, you're telling them stuff that you really shouldn't, or you're being intimate in a way where you shouldn't. It's not physical. It's not like they're sexting you, but it's like, no, this is personal stuff that like, that's not something you say to a friend. If you don't get that validation, if you aren't able to bring up the receipts, then you have to ask the hard questions. You have to ask, was it the connection? Do you feel like you are spending too much time with this person compared to me? Do you feel like you are taking away from the relationship with me to be around this other person? You have to start asking things about like, is it just friends or do you need them in your life? Like, is it because
this is making me squirm.
Yeah.
And it's true, right?
Yeah.
And it can't. Are you trying to say that you can change that you're just missing these pitches and that you can just change how you do things? Or do you think that someone needs more than one person in their life? They need to have one of these going for everybody.
That's the tough thing is everybody needs friends to make us a good, well-rounded human being. We all need other people in our life to give us different types of attention, stimuli, information. Like my relationship with you, Todd, like that's something I can't get with anyone else. I've got friends who are just there to like laugh and play games with. I've got friends who are there to like give me a sort of like more of a professional support where like we talk about like the advances we're making in life. So
you couldn't swap us around though. It wouldn't work. You could
exactly. So
yeah,
when you approach these questions, the hard questions, you're not asking, could you give up all your friends all at once? Or could you give up even one friend? The question you're asking is, are you taking away from this relationship to be with that other person right now? And if they can honestly tell you yes, or if they are self-aware enough to say yes, and to at least be willing to negotiate, all you have to tell them honestly is, I feel bad. I feel alone in this relationship. And if they are a good partner, they'll hear that and they'll want to make you feel less alone. They will respond to that. And then you start talking about, okay, here are the reasons why. And we can just put on the shelf for now that this other person might be to blame. Just start with, I feel alone.
And that's what I feel like will happen, though. That person will change for a temporary time piece, they will at first, but then they'll fatigue again and go back to exactly the way they were, and you'll be re-disappointed, and
Well, that's...
And you broke up with your emotional relationship. And they're in an emotional relationship with someone else. They don't want you back. There's fear of loss of that too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That they're going to take all that attention they're giving you and give it to somebody else.
Well, that's where step 2 comes in. The first step is not admitting you have a problem. That's an old cliche. The first step is saying how you feel and making sure they hear you and that they understand that's how you feel, that they don't become defensive and try to... There's nobody on earth who is allowed to tell you don't feel something. So, and if it's genuine and you are being genuine, them arguing with you tells you that they shouldn't be in your relationship anyway.
Yeah, amen. Well said. Yeah, don't tell me how to feel. I know exactly how I feel.
Yeah, exactly. So if they recognize how you feel, they're receptive to it, and they're emotionally responsive at that point, then you move on to step 2, which is address the problems. Don't unload on them. Don't start hitting them with both volleys of the guns and say, here we go. Like I got the validation. I got the go ahead. All, guns clear. Like no. You address the problems, and you talk about what you're not giving them and what they are getting from somebody else. Like we said, almost always, if somebody is emotionally cheating in a relationship, they're not getting something. Now's the time to ask that question. I know you're going to feel hurt, and it's going to be hard to start that. But if you ask that question, what are you getting from the relationship that I'm not providing? Take some time and think about it. Please let me know. That's when both they will admit an emotional cheating, because that makes them get introspective. That asks them, hey, are you okay? What are you getting out of this relationship that you're not getting from me? That makes them take time to think about their answer. That makes them sort of like, that puts them in their head and lets them know that you actually do care and you're not just ready to, divorce them or leave them. And when they say it out loud, when they talk about what they're not getting, that's when it's on the table. That's the cards on the table moment. And you can start acknowledging the problems that predates the emotional affair, that goes back before they started hanging out with Johnny Knoxville and giving him all their attention.
So I'm guessing that you did this. You did
Yes.
this. Did it seem... Did some of the things you heard seem fairly obvious, and you're like, "Yeah, I have had that problem in my life," or was some of it you were surprised?
I was surprised. Like, I was very surprised.
Really?
Yeah, and you think I shouldn't be. What I was expecting to hear was, I'm not available emotionally, which I consider myself to be very available. Like, I'm very in touch with my feelings. I practice self-awareness as much as possible. What I heard was, you're not doing the fun, cute things in a relationship that new relationships should have. And I was like, I got upset. I was defensive. Like, I'm I'm not a child. Like my first instinct was like,
listen, I don't work for the circus here. Okay.
Right. Exactly. like, what do you want? You want Lady in the Tramp? Like, what do you want me to be? Like, are you looking for, a movie relationship? But then I started thinking about it. It's like, no, I really don't do anything. Like I do. Yeah, I was being very emotionally mature, but maybe too much, and I was not recognizing that. For me, this is going to sound so conceited, but I don't view myself as a cute person. I take myself very seriously. Writing among professional groups has taught me that. I picked a lot of that up from going to the Writers Guilds, like when I was ranked with the Writers Guild, and like trying to be taken seriously. And so I started taking myself very seriously, and I did that in a relationship too, and it didn't work. So I needed to allow myself to be silly and cute and do those things that like.
It's like the police officer that comes home and is still a police officer. They got to know
Oh,
where to
exactly. Yeah. No, but I was working in different forms of law enforcement at the time still, and I was getting my investigator's license. So I'm like, no, I really was acting like that. I hope you know that.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, that is a perfect analogy. So we had that discussion, and then we started talking about the next step, which is after you have that in the open and you talk about what each party's fault is in a real way, then you start talking about boundaries. For us, because I need numbers, I need like almost statistics. We talked about how many hours a day it would be okay to be communicating with somebody else outside the relationship, but those boundaries can take other forms. You should talk about how you would define what a friendship is and how you would define when somebody is more than a friend. There's
well, I think the analogy too for working out, you don't work out for 8 hours a time. It's not good for you. But if you work out for 30 minutes or this much, right? Moderation is a key to healthiness too, you know?
Yeah. And the same with friends. Like a healthy friendship is you hang out with them a couple hours a week and then you're done. Like,
right. But you don't spend all weekend with, it can get out of, because you get some kind of pleasure out of it. You start doing more of it and then it starts to affect the rest of your life. It is.
Yeah. If it's every day, multiple hours and it's taking away from your relationship, that's not a friendship. That is a relationship. Our communication, the way we described it when we set our boundaries, everyone's is going to be different. I don't want to say that ours was the right way. Everyone is going to have a different right way. But we determined how many hours a day communicating with somebody else is forming a relationship with them versus a friendship. We also talked about, we are both monogamous by nature, like Stephen King. So we talked about, is it okay to be in a voice chat or call with another person for an extended period of time without discussing with the other person, like without discussing it with the partner. So we basically started using almost total transparency after that, where the other person knows what they're doing. We don't share each other's texts, by the way. I will say that I've heard some partners go very extreme with this to a point where I feel it might be unhealthy, which is you read each other's text messages and online messages. That feels a lot.
That's checking on them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a mistrust. So you want to end with trust. You don't want to punish them for having emotionally cheated. You don't want to become their father looming over them, looking at their text messages. You want to just more define boundaries of time and like how much time is a good amount with you, how much attention is a good amount, what is a friendship and what is not a friendship. Actually might be the clearest way to say that. One of the things you will have to discuss, I'm sorry to say this, determine whether or not you should remain in the relationship. Try to allow they say on this article, try to allow the dust to settle before choosing whether to stay or go. If you do it while you're both heated, or if you do it during one of the other stages of this where you're putting your cards on the table or you're finally getting the other person to admit that, yes, they are emotionally invested in somebody else. If you hit them with, do you want to stay? They might leave and you might be throwing away your opportunity to set boundaries and discuss the future. So give it some time, talk about those boundaries first and talk about, the stakes first, and then take a break. Come back to us when you're both cool and say, okay, now do we want to continue a relationship together? Or do you really need that emotional connection? Or do you need that connection with somebody else permanently?
See, I like this so much, Joe. I can't tell you because this to me is it's so practical and so realistic as opposed to what I hear from what people say, which is it's wrong, divorce, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you do have time, and these are warnings. This is warnings that you're losing a part of the pie, a part of the pie that you want all of, And so it's nice that you could take that and, and work on it, but with a deep breath.
Yeah. That's huge. Like not rushing the rest of it. Like once you get to the part where you're validated.
Yeah. Not trying to, like you said, like, let's get to the bottom of this,
Right. Your detective work is over.
For start, how dare you?
Yeah. Um,
I'm not
and
surprised when someone doesn't love me anymore because I don't love myself all the time. You know what I mean?
you're like, I knew this was coming.
Exactly. It's been about 7 years.
Well, yeah. There's a final phase of this, and it has micro steps that you're going to have to do, which is how to recover from emotional infidelity. And there's jokes about like when somebody gets cheated on, first you cry, then you eat ice cream, then you go work out and find a new person. If you stay in the relationship, you still have to go through a recovery period. If you stick around and you guys decide to make it work and feel stronger, even if you feel better, you're still going to have to recover from what happened. And so that is going to take time. So give yourself time to grieve, basically, for the relationship you thought you had, and grieve for, the emotions you went through, the feeling gaslit, feeling unvalidated, feeling alone for a while. You have to grieve, otherwise you're going to hold it against the other person. And that's not healthy at all. Like that's something that is dangerous, which is you tell somebody, I forgive you, we have new boundaries, we have a new plan, and then you go forward and you're still mad at them and you still hold it against them and you're still like, well, you emotionally cheated. That is so hard to not do, and also it's absolutely necessary. Like you have to be able to actually not be angry at them every day. So instead, give yourself time to grieve.
And I think if you remember that you're part of this too.
Yeah.
I think if you're honest, like you said, with yourself, and then I think the big thing is talking and listening.
Yes.
As opposed to, I think this is not the discipline of a parent. This is somebody that you value their feelings and that you need them to be on your team. And so when you listen to them, I think that was great what you said, that it was so different than what you thought, because I think we know what we're lacking, and I think we're wrong. I think we're totally wrong, and that's why these things happen.
Yes. And what you just said is perfect. You are not trying to discipline them. You are trying to get back the relationship you had before. Don't think about it as they did wrong, they need to be punished. They just lost their best friend. Like think about it that way. They are grieving almost a total emotional loss of they no longer get to speak with somebody who is providing a lot of emotional support in their life. So don't think of it as you now get to discipline them like a child. It's no, they are grieving too. And
this
you
Tyler,
need to give each other time.
This Tyler, who's a skydiving PhD, who can sing dance.
That sounds very specific, by the way.
Son of a bitch, you know?
Yeah.
He's gorgeous, his long hair, you know?
It's like, why'd she have to emotionally cheat with a model? The next step is self-care. And not in a way where like it's not the joke of self-care where it's like, well, now I'm going to take a bubble bath for 7 years and eat chocolate. It's more of you need to make sure that you are emotionally and physically healthy to be around this person in a continued way. Like you need to do some working out, do a project, get lots of sleep, hydrate. Like you really have to like, there's going to be a take a long breath moment where both partners feel bad. And in that space, that is the time for you to like keep checking on them, ask if they want to talk here and there, but also take care of yourself and make sure that you are physically and emotionally healthy to continue things.
And I'm loving this part even more, because I think what most people would think is what you need to do is go away to a cabin with your wife or husband, right?
Double down, yeah.
Yeah, and just spend every second together and change your phone numbers and move to Boise, Idaho, but instead actually working just on yourself and self-love, right?
Yeah.
Restoring your shattered self-esteem.
Yeah, this is not a time to re-lock down your relationship together. This is a time to take a breath and, think about what you want with that person and sort of let things sort of settle and take care of yourself. A good way to do this, and I hate to be this jerk, but therapy is a good way to do that. Speaking to a therapist is a quick way to have a friend who will get to the bottom of those feelings and be the kind of supportive you need pretty much immediately.
Who doesn't have an agenda or is going to gossip to friends and family.
That is something amazing and dangerous, which is if you go to a friend who saw this thing happening, your friend might be like, yeah, that bitch was emotionally cheating. I told you. Like, you might be going to talk to that friend who saw this all happening and was trying to warn you, and they may have serious feelings about this. They may have big emotions that they need to tell you about. That is not a good time to discuss them. Tell them to keep that to themselves for a while. You'll discuss it with them later, but right now you're working on a relationship. Yeah,
and they're gonna get in your ear again with an agenda, their own attention agenda.
Yeah, exactly. So if any of your friends are crass enough to try that, to be like, I told you, that jerk, they were emotionally cheating on you, just be like, yeah, I recognize that, and let them know we are working on a relationship. We're planning to move forward. Please be respectful, and I value your opinions, but right now we're just going to sort of emotionally take a breath and settle. And then we talked about setting boundaries. That is the last step that you do when you're both clear-headed, calm, and you're looking to start talking again and discussing things again. So, boundaries like no texting while you're being intimate together, no texting other people while you're on a date together for a while, no more than X amount of hours spent on the phone each day with somebody else. Check with the partner to see if they're available to listen to you before you go to somebody else. That's something we have carried on doing, and that's something the Gottman Institute recommends for couples that have been together 10, 20 years. It's, if you want to talk about something, check the other person. Just be like, hey, are you interested in talking to me about this subject? Like when I'm reading psych stuff, or even if it's weird things, I'm reading about, like, new science stuff coming out, or if I've got neat subjects that are on my mind, I'll say, are you interested in this? If I say that and it's political, my partner will tell me no. I'll be like, hey, this crazy political thing is happening. And she'll be like, no, thanks. And I respect that. I'm like, I know that's a stressful subject. I respect that decision. And like we said at the middle of this episode, and really it bears repeating, if you can do those steps in a healthy way, and if you can reach that open conclusion, there's something called the Zeigarnik effect in psychology. It means that once you are done with information, it ceases to be necessary in your mind, and you start actually forgetting it. The same thing works with stuff like this. The same effect, like the thing that allows you to, if an attractive person on the train yells their phone number to me, and I'm sitting there, I'm like 771-3555, and like I'm trying to remember it. The moment I write it down, my brain immediately erases it. It is like a whiteboard. If you take a test and you've been studying for this test for months, and you finally you take the finals, and then afterward you find yourself forgetting serious facts that were in that test. That's the Zeigarnik effect. It is erasing things that you don't need anymore. The same thing happens with this emotional thing. Like if you both come to a very substantial conclusion, and you both have said your piece, and you actually feel good about it afterward, the things that the boundary you set, you will start forgetting parts of that difficult time. You won't forget that it happened, but you will actually allow yourself to start forgetting some of the pain and some of the details.
Well, and I think there's some personal accountability on both sides. It's different than a physical affair, because you really can take inventory of what's missing.
Yes,
more so than just being after somebody else sexually. But when it's more deeper, and then you can feel, so it's something that in time, and I've had these open sores, and they hurt so much when it happens that you think you'll never get over this. You just don't. You just do. It just doesn't. The feelings go away, and you actually look at it differently too. You look at it years later, and you're like, of course, You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us. We have a new episode every week.
You can connect with us at www.re-engineeredyou.com. That's where we have research links, show notes, feedback, and blog articles for each of our episodes.
We're not experts in anything, but we've got an opinion on everything.